Hello, everyone. Hi, can you hear me properly? Thank you and welcome to this side event. Thank you for coming here today. My name is Mohamed Langston Jain, and I'm a climate change expert with FAO. I'm based in Burundi. So first, I would like to apologize for this little delay in starting. We had some technical problems, but we're going to catch up with the time. And I want to welcome you in this side event to explore areas of collaboration between the implementation of NDCs of Arctic and least developed countries. So once again, thank you for being here. So as we all know, the NDC process started during COP21 in 2015, and countries submitted the revised version after 5 years. As countries are about to produce the NDC 3, it is crucial to take into consideration what made the failure and success of the two previous generations and rely on the international cooperation. Hence why we are here today to discuss this very, very important topic. And once again, we thank you for being here. So the objective of this event is to is primarily to delve into the NDCs with in-depth analysis and explanation on what are the youth sensitive and responsive climate policies, key criteria and principles, and also to provide examples of Arctic countries with youth sensitive NDCs, along with the journeys of children and youth climate advocates involved in NDC process. We will also provide tips, strategies for the Arctic and LDCs cooperation. And we have here, we will have our panel later, very interesting and dedicated youth advocates. But firstly, we're going to have a presentation on NDCs, and after that presentation, we'll take question and answers before the panel. So this side event was organized by ISHAKA 2050 by my colleague here, Mr. Audry Rusangwa, who's the executive director of ISHAKA 2250, which is a nonprofit youth organization based in Burundi, which is dedicated to promoting SDGs in education and measure to empower youth in SDG achievement. So to start off, I want to call Mr. Audry Rusangwa here to give us words of welcome so that we can launch this side event. Mr. Audry.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here in front of you all, and it's a fantastic day that we have today just to explore areas of collaboration. It's kind of identification of areas of collaboration to better implement the NDCs at national levels and at regional levels. It's a kind of concrete examples that are going to help us just to have some tips, recommendations that will help us reach the goals that are planned accordingly to the Paris Agreement. So distinguished delegates, good morning. It's an honor to be in front of you and giving these opening remarks of this session. As one of the stakeholders based in least developed countries, for us, it's not a matter of climate action. And for us, it's not a matter of only taking decision, but it's a matter of life. It's a matter of hopes, it's a matter of justice, and it's a matter of dignity. So we did recommend decision makers that to remember that behind every decision are real people with hopes, dreams, and basic needs. So the people in need, they really rely on decisions that are being taken here at COP29. So we rely on decision makers to be very, very positive, because the more they delay, so the more people perish. So we recommend them to decide for the future, at least decide for their children and their children. Because for us in least developed countries, we learn now how to be activists. We learn now how to be activists. But the many consequences the many effects of climate change made us ones. So we dedicated our activism to benefit from some fundamental rights in our society. So we were born activists. In other terms, we were activists by default because of many things that we recognize, many things that we noticed in our community made us being activists. So it's a very great pleasure to be here at this place and provide, recommendation and provide our advocacy at the right place and at the right time. So it's very good honor to be here, and thank you very much for today. Thank you.
Thank you deeply. Thank you deeply, Audrey, for these very important words, very meaningful. Um, for these very meaningful words. Dear participant, once again, thank you. We are running out of time, but thankfully our panelist here, Elizabeth, Mrs. Gulugulu, is here, and I invite you to come on the floor. So, dear participants, we're going to now move to the second session here and have Mrs. Elizabeth Gulugulu, who is a younger global focal point in 2022 and biodiversity and climate change specialist, to give us a presentation about NDCs and tell us and set the stage, highlighting the most important points. Mrs. Gulugulu.
Hello, how are you today? It's great to discuss to you about what the nationally determined contributions are and also to understand what could be the priorities for the least developing countries. I think first and foremost, we need to understand that the nationally determined contributions are unique per country, right? So if Malawi could probably be focusing on the importance or need to do with forest conservation, it might not be the same for Zambia because the challenges that they are facing are quite different, but you get to see that there are some similarities between when we look at NDCs. For example, in most African countries or some of the least developing countries, you see that they are mainly concerned about issues to do with renewable energy, because as far as it stands at the moment, the source of their energy is not that clean. They rely on coal. So you see that in their nationally determined contributions, renewable energy is the top priority. And you see that especially from countries that are in the Middle East, MENA region, and some parts of Africa, they really want to invest more into solar energy because they want to take advantage of the situation that they have. They have high temperatures, and it will only make sense if they want to, focus more on solar energy. But it's not only solar energy. I mean, renewable energy is quite broad. We look at wind energy. Right now, Kenya is almost 98% on renewable energy because they have wind energy. They also make use of solar energy. So this is what you actually get to pick, especially on most countries with the amongst the least developing countries. Then another issue that is quite important that maybe people might not be really interested to discuss about is, the industrial processes and product use in terms of how we are manufacturing our cement, how we are using cement, how we are manufacturing fertilizers, how we are using fertilizers. That whole process on its own, it emits a lot of emissions. And we need to figure out ways we can reduce those emissions in the IPPU sector. So what are we going to do? Are we going to look at investing into sustainable machines that ensures that when the manufacturing process is happening, not a lot of emissions, go into the atmosphere. So this is also one of the components that maybe most of the least developing countries would also want to look at substitutions. How are they going to substitute from the fertilizers that they are used to sustainable fertilizers? How are they going to substitute cement to, any other product that is way more sustainable? So we have touched upon issues to do with renewable energy. We've touched upon issues to do with industrial processes and product use. Also issues to do with the afolu, agriculture, forest, and other land uses, right? Uh, when we're talking about agriculture, how are we practicing our agriculture in our respective countries? Are we investing more into agroecological practices? Are we investing more into climate smart agricultural practices? Or we are just farming and are not cautious about our environment. All we worry about is the end product, which is the food, right? So you'll see that most countries now, I know quite a number of countries that have now started incorporating climate smart agricultural practices. Sometimes it's not because they want to, but the situation is forcing them to. Because if they do not climate proof their agriculture, there are issues to do with droughts that is going to affect them. There are issues to do with pests and diseases that will affect them. So now the situation is now forcing them to adapt. So some will try to incorporate the 12 pillars of agroecological practices within their communities. And also a forest. I know most people will say when you practice farming, when you practice agriculture, it's difficult to conserve forest. But some, they are practicing agroecological practices whereby they incorporate forest or trees within that particular field, and those trees they actually add in some sort of nitrogen value to the soils, which will benefit the crops that are in the field. So these are some of the initiatives that different countries are actually, trying to use so that they strike a balance with Mother Nature in as much as they want the food, but they also want to conserve the environment. They also want to regulate temperatures within the environment. You will figure out that most of them also they'll actually have to look for bees to be in their to be within their farms, because bees they play an ecological role in terms of promoting the increase of production within that particular land. um, Bees they act as pollinators, and for bees to survive they need trees. So if you just put bees in a field with no trees, with no water, definitely they will not survive, but you definitely need the pollinator. So these are some of the strategies that, different communities, different countries from the least developing countries are actually incorporating so that it makes sense at the end of the day, and they also try to, stay and commit to their communicated targets within the NDCs. As mentioned before, forests, the NDCs are unique, depending with the challenges that particular country is facing. So we have looked at afolu, agriculture, forest, and other land use. In terms of land uses, we need to understand that land uses, it differs, People have different preferences. Some people might say, oh, we need to develop. And some will say, no, we cannot develop. We think we need to protect this particular land because it's a sensitive area. So it also depends with priorities. And in most cases, countries, they opt for what is going to be profitable at the end of the day. So you see that most of the areas or most of the lands, they are quickly degrading because countries, they consider what is going to generate more income at the end of the day. So this is where the challenge could be. But some countries are actually trying to invest more, making sure they protect their wetlands, they protect certain forests, and more carbon sinks means we are regulating our temperatures, we are absorbing carbon, and now with issues to do with carbon trading, carbon credits, most countries are taking advantage of that situation. I think last but not least, there are cross-cutting issues to do with how women, how young people participate, how they are being mainstreamed within the NDC's agenda. And you see most NDCs, they will look at the participation of women, how are women being incorporated. We have organizations like UNFPA who have been championing for the participation and role of women within the NDCs. And to them, they say that women are actually affected by the effects of climate change. And it is important that they are part of the conversation. You see other organizations, you look at UNDP, they are championing the participation of young people within their NDCs through an initiative called the Climate Promise, whereby they think that young people are custodians of the environment and they need to be part of the conversation, not only being part of the conversation, but also be an implementing partner when we are talking about NDCs. Last but not least, I want to talk about um, waste. What is the role of waste, right? Waste also emits its fair share to to the atmosphere if it is not managed well. So if waste is banned, it also contributes, to greenhouse gas emissions, and most countries are also looking at how best can they manage waste, how best can they improve or invest more into recycling, reuse, how best can they, use the theme catch them young, so that young people at the end of the day, they understand the importance of waste management. So waste is something that is important. Waste can be generated from the industries. I talked about the industrial processes and product use. Waste can be generated from farms. So the farmers, they need to know how they can manage their waste. Waste can be generated from hospital. How are hospital or medical institutions managing their waste? Are they burning? What is the height of their chimneys, right? If they are burning, what kind of stuff are they burning? How is it contributing to GHG emissions, and how are certain countries committed to reduce those emissions? Waste can be generated even at big conferences like this. We are generating so much waste. Is this waste going to be recycled? How are we going to reduce the emissions? How are we going to reduce burning of waste? Waste can be generated at schools, any public places that you can think of, waste is generated. But the most important question to ask is, at the end of the day, when this waste is generated, how is it going to be managed? So I will just highlight these four, because priorities, as I mentioned, they're quite different, but I had to pick similarities amongst LDC countries, which is the IPPU, the Afolu sector, the waste sector, and renewable energy sector, which could be similar amongst countries, the least developing countries. So thank you so much for the platform.
Dear Elizabeth, thank you so much for this amazing presentation, for setting the stage and showcasing the synergies between the Arctic and LDCs. Because we're running out of time, we're going to now swiftly move to the next session where we're going to have our panelists. If you could please approach the stage. Thanks again, Elizabeth. Thank you. So first, we're going to hand the mic to Mr. Sunrit Panda, and I will ask you a question. Could you please introduce yourself, telling us a little bit about your patient and how it relates to our topic of today?
Of course. Thank you so much for helping us host this panel. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for your wonderful remarks. My name is Sunrit Panda. I'm the co-founder of Nirvana Carbon Solutions. We're a social enterprise operating currently in India with plans to expand to Panama. We do carbon credit projects specifically working with smallholder farmers in rural West Bengal, helping them eliminate crop stubble burning, as well as empowering their livelihoods along the process. We're also doing reforestation work in the Sundarbans, which is the largest mangrove forest in the world, which extends between India and Bangladesh, which is an LDC country. And finally, I am a student at Princeton University in the United States, which, as you all know, sits on the Arctic Council and is an Arctic country. And Emma, who will speak after me, is my co-founder on these initiatives.
Thank you so much, Sunrit, for this presentation. I'm going to ask you a follow-up question in regards to what you were saying. So what role can these regions play in ensuring that the voice of the most vulnerable from our regions, the Arctic regions and LDCs, are heard in international climate negotiation and decision?
Absolutely. Happy to answer that question. This is particularly And I think that in particular, the youth and young people are relevant to this conversation because, you know, we're the ones going out here places. We have access to, the internet where you can cold email someone and just have a conversation with them. And that knowledge sharing allows um, in LDCs to have access to these resources. I think I'll cite some examples in particular. I think that um, I'll talk about Nepal and Bangladesh, which are two LDC countries in South Asia that do a lot of trade internationally. Bangladesh forms the majority of LDC countries' exports in terms of merchandise. And Nepal and Bangladesh both have lots of trade with India, which is a developing nation but doesn't fall into the LDC list. There's a paradigm where Arctic countries' development funds have investments in countries like Nepal, where countries like Nepal and Bangladesh can be a model for investment for other countries in Africa, in Southeast Asia that also fall into the LDC list. And I think that ultimately these types of events where local communities can get in touch with the investors in the Arctic countries like the US, this is the most effective way to stimulate that because once you get that trust between an investor and a project, that's when ideas and capital can flow.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this clarification, for your intervention. And I just want to put the focus on local communities. Like you say, it's very, very important. So, making the link and moving to our second panelist, Mrs. Emily Moore, I want to ask you as well to introduce yourself, tell us about your patient, and already ask you the follow up question, which is what are main sectors you think should lead collaboration between northern countries and the global south, building on what Senrit just said? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Emma Lamore, and I have a similar background to Senator as we are both co-founders of Nirvana Carbon Solutions and both undergraduate students currently. And so I think I'll spare us all the details about what he already said, but I just want to mention that I guess the motivation for our work in West Bengal is primarily to solve the crop stubble burning issue. And in the climate solutions, we have the opportunity to not only mitigate emissions, but also support local livelihoods. And what we're doing in West Bengal is trying to eliminate air pollution and save lives that are lost to air pollution, especially lives of women and children who are disproportionately affected by that issue. So I wanted to raise attention to that before answering the question. And so now I'm going to just go into the question and kind of use our background as an explanation. I think the most important sectors that we can address are agriculture and like reforestation or nature-based solutions. And agriculture is incredibly important and it's extremely underfunded as a climate solution. I mean, it's where we get our livelihoods anyway. We know we're going to continue to do it. And a lot of the LTC countries rely on agriculture and need to continue to increase their agricultural production to meet increasing food demands in their countries. And we see this in our work in West Bengal, where our solution, biochar, also acts as a natural fertilizer that improves soil quality as well. And the reforestation projects we're doing also enhance the nitrogen in soil. So I think an important piece of information that we wanted to address is that LDCs hold vast land-based mitigation potentials, estimated to match 70% of global aviation's 2019 CO2 emissions. When we put that into perspective, we know that the opportunity is immense. And we, as NGO leaders ourselves, receiving funding from Arctic countries, primarily the US, but we hope to expand, see this as an opportunity for private capital to provide a solution for people to start from on the ground, local communities, and build up through entrepreneurship. And by starting with entrepreneurship and not having to go through the top of governments in LDC countries, where that can be a tricky challenge to navigate, we're able to empower people at a very local scale. We're talking about the farm that they live on and work on every day. We're able to empower them to turn that into a diversified source of income and also a way to mitigate climate change. And so ultimately, we think that agriculture has to be the primary discussion when it comes to how Arctic countries can support LDCs they should support them fiscally and allow people at the grassroots level to do what they do best and continue to do agriculture, but also find another stream of income through climate solutions. And I'll hand the mic back to you.
Thank you so much, Emma, for this amazing intervention. And I cannot agree more with you. Agriculture is very, very important when we think about this topic. Now, we're going to move to our third panelist, Lisiana. So I want to ask you the same question first, Lisiana. If you could please introduce yourself and tell us your patient and how it relates to our topic of today.
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the organizers for the invitation. My name is Liziana Emakoa. I'm the founder of the Center for Community Impact and Sustainability in Sierra Leone. And I'm also a delegate here at COP29 representing the Youth for Opportunity Partnership in Africa. So, and then I would say through CCIS, the Center for Community Impact and Sustainability, we're currently, holding a lot of capacity building initiatives, particularly to build climate resilience amongst young people and as well as girls. And recently, we just organized last month the local conference of youth in Sierra Leone, the very first of its kind in Sierra Leone, and that was a platform to engage young people in climate processes, educate them on climate policies, the NDCs, the National Adaptation Plan for the country, and even in one of in section 3.7 of our NDCs in Sierra Leone, it actually promotes an engagement of young people and for and being able to get them involved in sorts of processes. I also work as a monitoring and evaluation analyst in Washington D.C. And I would like to say that as a M&E analyst, it's so important, to even just to be able to track, the progress of our NDCs. The third review is coming up, and it's so important, just to be able to see how far we've gone and how do we hold our member states, our government officials accountable. And just even just to like what the review, what are the KPIs and how we're able to ensure that we're achieving our targets, for the global stock take. So now to answer your question on successful partnerships between on the benefits of forming partnerships between the Arctic and the global South, the LDCs. First, I would like to say that from a regional context, the African continent has needs about $2.8 trillion, to be able to achieve its NDCs by 2030. And developing nations and multilateral financial entities, need to invest in capacity building, and from stemming from technical expertise to a technological transfer to investing in research and knowledge sharing, in the global south to be able sorry, and just to be able to provide those capacities, for global south countries, right? To be able to build the resilience and enable them, to effectively strengthen their local capacities. And I would like to say that, but one of the challenges that we've been facing, and like Elizabeth mentioned during her remarks, is that the global north has been proposing solutions that are not so tailored to the local needs of the global south. And I think it's time to start identifying, what applies to the global south. For example, I had the opportunity I had a meeting with one of the Minister of Environment for Costa Rica yesterday. And Sierra Leone, we're struggling with deforestation, land degradation, biodiversity laws. And then from that conversation, Costa Rica just 3 years ago just tackled biodiversity laws. So that's not an issue anymore. Whatsoever the Horn of Africa is dealing with, West Africa is not dealing with that as well. Not any, it's done dealing with that. We also have the issue of ensuring that and from what the global south can provide to the global north, it's we're in a position to provide valuable insights on adaptive best practices, adaptive measures to the global north. Especially to be able to also solve these solutions, so different from adaptative adaptation standpoint, and also to understand like the global north, they're also facing challenges, adverse effects of climate change. And finally, I would like to just talk about effective partnerships to supporting youth-led initiatives, climate smart youth-led initiatives, even through YOTA that I'm representing. We've been able through the Ford Foundation, we've been able to successfully support youth projects on the ground in the global south, from training climate negotiators to be able to attend COP29, to supporting providing robust workshops, where young people are able to negotiate at COP, to learn about the climate language, learn about climate policies. So thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Lisiana. And just to set the context, she was answering to the question on the potential benefits of forming a partnership between Arctic Nation and LDCs, which she answered amazingly, pointing out, I think, a few points that were mentioned before. The need to localize the response. It's not one size fit all, but the response needs to be localized and take into consideration the contextual reality. So now, last but not least, I want to move to Mrs. Elizabeth Gulugulu, give you the floor, and first ask you, thank you for your presentation, but to introduce yourself in your own words and tell us how what you do relate to our topic of today.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say congratulations on your first local conference of youth, and amazing job that you're doing. And what an amazing job that you're doing as well. This is quite a diverse panel. I've been really inspired hearing all the initiatives that you're doing in your respective country. And thank you so much for inviting me. I didn't properly introduce myself because I was running late, but my name is Elizabeth Gulugulu Machache. You can call me Liz. Actually, it's easier for everyone. No need to say all those names. And I'm a um I cannot call myself a young person. Yes, I'm still the age of 35 years, but I think I'm slowly evolving, right? And I'm a consultant. I also have a company called Sustain Sphere Advisory, which offers solutions to different organizations that would love to understand more about the youth participation in different UN processes, and offer advisory services. So in terms of the nationally determined contributions, I think I've said enough in my remarks, but I think I'll just give a call to action. We have had 9 good years to capacitate ourselves since 2015, when we had the intended nationally determined contributions, and then the second phase of the NDCs, which was in 2020, 2021. 9 good years, because next year will be 10 years. We had 9 good years for CSOs, NGOs, the governments, to build the capacity of different communities. I'm talking about young people, I'm talking about vulnerable people, people with disabilities, I'm talking about women, I'm talking about men. 9 good years. So it's not a blame game to say the government has not done this for us, because as an individual, you also have a responsibility to play. Now we have so many free online courses where you can just go online, you type NDCs, what are NDCs? You'll see that information free. So I think as a call to action, we all have a role to play. The NDCs do not belong to the governments. I think we need to be clear about that. We need to own the NDCs as our own initiatives as individuals. I have a role to play when it comes to reducing waste. I have a role to play when it comes to reducing emissions. And institutions have a role to play to ensure that information is disseminated. Institutions have a role to play to make sure that information is accessible, particularly to the vulnerable communities in the rural areas where they just hear about climate change, or they experience about climate change. But young kids do not have the luxury to read what climate change is. It's something that they experience, but they cannot connect with the global world. So we all have a role to play. And I like what you said about, monitoring and evaluation. We need to understand where are we coming from and where are we going. It's not a matter of just submitting the third cycle of the NDCs, but it's a matter of tracking our progress. Is there an improvement since 2015? If there is any improvement, let's do a self-evaluation. How can I, as an individual, be better? How can I contribute better? How can governments contribute better? How can we upscale our ambitions? It's not only about ambitions, but also upscale our actions so that we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And you have been talking about, carbon credits. It's something that is quite complicated for young people to understand, but seeing young people leading such initiatives, it is quite inspiring because we can actually make use of that peer-to-peer education. Young people will listen if they are speaking, in as much as it's complex, but because they've started an initiative, they have so many case studies, they have so many examples, they can tell you the statistics and figures, the gaps that are there. Young people are inspired by that kind of initiative. So when we're looking at NDCs, we need to connect the dots. Who is doing what, where, how can we connect so that at the end of the day, we can amplify the voices, we can amplify the actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in particular sectors, some of the sectors that I've mentioned. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And just to quote a very famous US president, to come back to what you're saying, do not ask what your government can do. Ask what you can do for your government. And in this context, we would say to everyone, this call of action, what can you do to help? Don't wait, act. I want to ask a very, very quick follow-up question. Uh, could you tell us what are the similarities of climate challenges between LDCs and Arctics, in your opinion, and how a collaboration could bring advancement? Very, very quickly before we move to question and answers.
Thank you so much. I think I'll just emphasize on what she said. She talked about livelihoods. It's a battle. We need to secure our livelihoods. And we cannot secure our livelihoods if we have constant effects of climate change affecting us. It could be fluctuations of temperatures. If there are fluctuations of temperatures, our crops, they cannot survive. So it's a battle. At the end of the day, for me to speak here, to talk to you, I require some energy. I require good food, right? So it's a battle of livelihood. And if it's a battle of livelihood, a battle of the stomach, and a battle of money, then there are similarities, and which actually is a good call for action, because if we are not going to act, it means sooner or later we are going to be starving with hunger, and it means we cannot achieve even the SDGs themselves. So I will not say much, but it's a battle for our livelihoods, and we need to try by all means to secure and protect our livelihoods. It could be by climate proofing our agriculture, by empowering our local communities, by ensuring we have sustainable policies that backs whatever we intend to do on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all our panelists here. And now I want to give the floor to you for any hot take, reaction, question, and they will be very happy to answer. Anyone? Any question? All right. The floor is yours. Could you introduce yourself?
Hi. So my name is Kelvin, and I just joined here, but I am just throwing more light on what I heard Elizabeth talking about. In fact, I was happy to hear her throwing more light on let's own the thing, the NDCs by ourselves. The future is ours. Whatever we're doing, we shouldn't see it as like something that belongs to the leaders. In fact, when you are with your dad, that's the simple example I always give. When you are with your dad in a home, and you go to your dad, Dad, I need this, I need that. In fact, they need to see your importance in the home before they give you whatever you need. So I was very happy. I just joined, but I heard what you just, your contribution. In fact, it was massive. Let's see ourselves in that position. Let's own it by ourselves and make sure that we play our role in this I mean, this whole fight against this climate change. And trust me, our leaders will always hear us. Else, whenever we go around, oh, we need this, we need funding, we need this, and all that, and they don't see our use, how are they going to help us? Right? So please, I applaud her for her contributions and remarks, everything. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for reinforcing her points as to action, action, and not waiting. I think we have another question here. Can you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Sarah Khan from Pakistan, and it was a really enlightening session. And our panelists, all of them had very great points to discuss. I cannot hear. You can? I cannot. Okay. So basically, what I wanted to say is that there was a point that you, madam, made about industry and how emissions are to be controlled in the industry and how we should be mindful of how the energy is being used. So I would say we should build from ground up, start by auditing our industries from, we would say, conditional monitoring. We could take that and take that as an example and do a pilot project on a few industries, divide it onto sectors, and then go on with developing our database on how the trend of energy is building over there. And then we can decide how we want to improve and implement changes in the industry. When you were talking about plantation, in Pakistan, we have a project that we have done on plantation where kids in schools uh, plant trees, and every student takes ownership of their own planted tree. So by the time they grow up, they would have their own tree, and the sense of responsibility within the student would be so strong towards forestation, towards plantation, and how it is reducing carbon emissions uh, within the region, within their own homeland, and they're seeing greenery. So this is something that we are doing is to reinforce positive changes and positive development. And when it comes to the energy utilization in the industry, we could start by doing basic audits and conditional monitoring, and then moving up, scaling up to ASHRAE level 2, level 3 audits. And then we can, I think, prevent a lot of energy wastage in these domains. That is something that I just wanted to add. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for this amazing intervention. And now I want to ask, are there any more questions or hot takes here?
Thank you so much for the panelists, your points you've made, really strong points, and I'm really grateful for some of the experiences you've shared. My name is Nathan. I work for an organization in Ghana called Youth Opportunity and Transformation in Africa. So for us, we're big on youth issues, and this is really interesting because when we talk about NDCs, even those of us who like to think we're a bit privileged to attend conferences of this nature and engagements of this nature, sometimes there's a bit of confusion under as to what that really means. How do we quantify it? How do we even determine it? So I'm just thinking from a point of inclusion, in your experiences, how are you able to make sure that this type of technicalities trickle down to the grassroots and even involve young people who are supposed to be taking their future now, right? We're young people here, and even a lot of us are struggling to really understand, except for those of you who are really neck deep in the whole NDC conversation. But a lot of us here may not really understand what goes into it. So when we're talking about inclusion, what are some of the things that you've done in the work, that's fantastic work that you've already all showcased, how that gets to the grassroots, that young people in the hinterlands, in the deep communities are able to understand what this means and what role they can play in that process of really contributing to these conversations. Yeah.
Is that a general question for?
I can definitely give my perspective on this, especially because I this past summer conducted a educational project in rural West Bengal, India, where I was able to see, the whole spectrum of youth interest in technology. This was the educational project. While it wasn't directly related to climate change, what I saw was I think education is the main driver of this involvement of youth in the issues that our societies face. I'll give one example. I spoke at a very rural college where almost 80 to 85% of the students are first generation college students. They come from families where, this might be their only chance of getting out of their village, or rather, getting a formalized education after uh, class 10. And what I saw was, a lot of the basic knowledge that we take for granted was lacking, but there was this passion to learn more. And there was this passion to engage in issues at such a deep level, despite them not having had a basic level of education. And I think that by giving access to the most passionate students, because, we cannot help everyone, not everyone can be part of, I mean, we want that, but there's a lack of resources, tragedy of the commons. By recognizing the most passionate, the people who are not necessarily the smartest, but the people who are willing to work the hardest, the willing to go to the seminars, go to the workshops, travel on the bus for 2 hours to go to a speaker event where they might be able to get some knowledge. We should give these students the opportunities to engage at the level of a conference like this, where you see students like that who are representing their communities. And I think ultimately, by focusing on education, or integrating education into larger climate, industrial, agricultural initiatives, you can get the youth invested.
Thank you so much. So, I'm from Zimbabwe, which is in the southern part of Africa. And in 2019, we started an initiative with the support of UNDP, UNCCLAN, the government of Zimbabwe, and a church-based organization called ACT Alliance. What we decided to do was to get into the rural communities and to educate young people within the rural communities about what NDCs are. So we have 10 provinces in Zimbabwe. So so far we have visited uh, 36 districts in all these 10 provinces, educating young people what NDCs are and how they can contribute better in the national policies, and so that they have a better understanding and appreciate what NDCs are. And what we decided to do is, through that information, we compiled all that information and we put it into a policy brief. This policy brief, we then submitted it to the government of Zimbabwe and we handed it over to our Minister of Environment, who was really proud of the work that we did, to the extent that he had to present this policy brief in the cabinet so that other ministers are aware of what young people are doing on the ground. So this is a very good case study, which is really passionate on my heart, because we went on the ground. We actually saw, one of the things that hindered the participation of young people is, amongst the young people, some, especially ladies, they have children and they could not attend to our meetings. And we would find out that our meetings, they had so many males, and we had to ask the rural councils, how come we don't have a gender balance? And they told us that the women are at home, they're taking care of the babies, and they've gone to fetch water. And then we had to ask the rural district council that, is it okay if you can extend the invitation to the women and they can bring their babies? So we had to expand our team so that they would assist in caring for the children if they become a little bit, So this, when we are talking about ensuring that the conversation, we we had to ensure that we had to go all the way in making sure that even the women that are really vulnerable, they are also part of the conversation and they do not have anything to hinder them. So this is just a short case study that I just had to share. The policy brief, you can search it. You can type on Google policy brief by Zimbabwean Youth on NDCs and you'll see it. It's also on UNDP website. Thank you.
So for me, just in line to what Elizabeth said, I'm just going to give two successful examples. Again, going back to the local conference review that we put together. So prior to that, we held two virtual consultations where we were able to collect the input of young people, not only in the Western area in Sierra Leone, but as well as young people in the different provinces. And we, through those consultations, it was a means, get to be able to have all the voices of young people for our national youth statement that we also launched a couple weeks ago, and also giving them an opportunity to really learn about the 12, I mean, we identified 12 key thematic areas, but through the look from, I mean, key thematic areas, from the local context of the country, and giving them an opportunity to actually, provide their inputs, identify different gaps in those areas and what they wanted to see, and also explaining to them, this is exactly, what this means. This is what the NDCs mean. This is what's in the national action plan, adaptation plan, and this is what this document is saying about young people. And then and also, I'm also happy to share that our national youth statement, because our UNFCCC, we're able to also share that national youth statement with a UNFCCC focal point, which where a statement was embedded in the negotiations here at COP during negotiations. And the second one is in the energy sector. Just last year, we carried out initiative in one of the districts, Mambali district, where we were actually trying to we're training or we're educating local communities, particularly young people, on the importance of engaging their local government, so municipalities, on intellectual property or patent laws, in terms of being able to protect their local innovations and local inventions, because it's so much important when the government officials are not enforcing those patent laws. It's there's so much challenges in terms of having a free flow of free flow of intellectual sorry, so free flow of so sorry, guys. So we're of technology transfer amongst between different countries, and then even in the states of from the context of the global north, where that's why we're having issues with renewable energy, because that's and because that exactly because that was designed, that on its own is designed to match the context of the global north. So the global south, we're still struggling with that. So those are some of the things that we're actually doing. We're educating and ensuring that those laws, those patent laws are in place. So our innovations are actually being conserved. So I'm so sorry, like, guys, did that.
I just wanted to add one brief point, which is if we can give the youth the option so that they don't have to choose working over education. That choice is one that most people will make. They'll choose work. If we can give education through work, then we can provide, an efficient alternative to teaching people the ways that they can change their livelihoods and outcomes. And I'll end there. I wanted to just briefly mention that.
Thank you so much to all of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're nearing the end of our event here, but I want to call on Audrey to come and give us closing words before we go on to the group photo.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for the panelists for the powerful words. It's really it can help us just implement, keep the promises as we heard from different panelists. It's time to act. It's time not to wait for a hero to save us, but just stand up and take your responsibility, not just pointing others. Implement is your responsibility. Just do your responsibility. And we are in the same boat, so we are in this together. So we need to succeed together. We have two options. The first option is to succeed. The second option is to succeed. So thank you very much. Thank you for your support. And remember, community engagement is something very powerful, because it's only community engagement that can lead to the sustainability of our action, because we'll not wake up tomorrow morning and figure out that all the effect of climate change disappeared, but only our collective action will decide what the future looks like. Thank you very much. And now is the end of the session. we can take a group photo to end up with the session. Thank you very much.